there?
No, you don't have to be. You don't have to be. I've come about it firstly primarily through capital appreciation. That's my model for the first sort of 2 and a bit years. I would rather back what I know. So I have the opportunity here with a gentleman that I work with who has a sort of very decent sized portfolio. That allowed me to jump in on some deals, use my capital. I get a very good return on my money in a, sort of on a 3 or 4 month cycle.
Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
Hey folks, welcome back to the show. Today's guest, Richard Harrison, operates Caldera Capital, a private office investment platform focusing on London and the surrounding areas. You can find him on Instagram at Richard_J_Harrison. Richard, thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you, Dylan. My pleasure.
I typically like to start by asking folks how they got started in investing, but this is an area of investing I know almost nothing about, investing in London and the surrounding areas. So walk me through that. How do you even get started investing in London?
So I'll give you the short version. So I typically started out in property, as most people do, as an agent here. We obviously touched on before that the commission structure here is very different to the States. I made the natural progression from doing resales into what we would classify as new developments, new homes, that kind of thing. I started in a family company, and then I moved to CBRE, who you will be familiar with. I know they're very big in the States. They actually acquired one of the companies that I work for. And then subsequently went to work for BNP Paribas, big French bank, on the real estate side in London, in the UK, again on new developments. So I stayed there until I was associate director. We went through a couple of mergers and things changed for me. So I wanted a little bit more flexibility. I've always been quite entrepreneurial, I guess. So it was probably only a matter of time. From there, I then took the leap out. So before I got into investing, I already had, sort of 10, 12 years of corporate experience to lean on. And, looking back on it, you always think there are things you wish you'd bought now, obviously looking back 10 years ago. So it was just a matter of right place, right time. Very much right place, right time.
When we talk about investing in the United States, it's going to be regional. And I say this, there's going to be some people who may say, well, you can do it remotely. To that, I'll say, if you're just getting started and you're in Texas, it's tough to be looking at properties in, Ohio, although people will do that. But the Texas market where I'm licensed is like night and day different than northern New Jersey where I grew up, right? And so you can kind of do more, both because of the entry point and because of less regulation and because of less population density, more available land. So there's more happening in Texas. Now, London is the exact opposite of that when I think about investing in London. So walk me through what it's like being an investor in London, and also what's the avatar of an investor in London? What's their typical background?
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
Yeah, so I think London's probably not as different as you were saying to your market. It is quite night and day. You know, everyone, I think possibly from an American perspective, you know, what you see of London and what we see is I guess two different things. I guess it's like looking at New York City and then you guys think, well, actually there's a lot more than just that bit that all the tourists go to. So, you know, the market here, you can spend anything from, you know, £250,000 to £250 million, depending on what you want to buy. And all of that probably happens within a space that's, you know, I don't know, 20, 30 miles in diameter at most. So it's quite a lot in a small space. London has a lot of international investment, especially from the Far East. That was a big experience when I was in new homes and new developments, because it's always seen as a safe place to park your money, for one. And it's such a huge population density. You know, especially after we've had a lot of problems previously, you know, in 2008 with the similar financial crisis that you had, and post Brexit here, when we left the European Union, when a lot of European cities were trying to take the dominance that London has. But, you know, the two biggest population areas, I think, in Europe, if I'm correct, but certainly in London are London and Canary Wharf, and they're both within about 4 miles of one another. Canary Wharf actually employs, I think it's 250,000 people a day. So it's same during COVID. You know, it changed the market, but people need to be here. So that kind of keeps it interesting, and it keeps the investment opportunity quite broad. You know, there's everything from the super high-end stuff to we call them HMO, so houses of multiple occupancy, so probably not too dissimilar to the kind of condo model, where, you know, you can look at things for student accommodation, you can look at renting things out. We have companies here that guarantee your rent for 5 years, so you can look at kind of buying big blocks and putting them together and kind of moving them out. Plenty of places that are probably not too different to how you do things. You know, where I live here, there's a hospital around the corner. So, you know, there's a lot of things around here that will cater for nurses and doctors and things like that. So it's very much, there's one market, but lots of microcosms within that make the sort of greater piece.
Now, is there an opportunity for, you know, a smaller investor or someone just getting into the space to invest in the surrounding areas, or do you really have to be like an institutional player out there?
No, you don't have to be. You don't have to be. I've come about it firstly primarily through capital appreciation. That's my model for the first sort of 2 and a bit years, which is, you know, I had enough that, similar as you were saying, I could probably buy a little bit further away from where I would want to, but I don't know that market. So it's not a dive I would make. I would rather back what I know. So I have the opportunity here with a gentleman that I work with who has a sort of very decent sized portfolio, it's probably worth about 20 million currently. He does a strategy which buy and hold. So he will buy things at a good price below market value, do them up, retain them, rent them out, usually on large scale, and then refinance them. So that allowed me to jump in on some deals, use my capital, because he's obviously buying lots, to aid the other deals. I get a very good return on my money in sort of on a 3 or 4 month cycle, which means over a period of time I can appreciate my capital, with the plan then to do joint ventures with him, and then probably to mirror that model that he already does. But it's a stepping stone process. I could do it right now, but the benefit I get from growing the money is greater right now than having the asset. So I look at it as a kind of 2-step process, you know, because then I've got the ability to diversify and do some capital appreciation and some asset holding.
I think, we're dispelling some myths here, because as I'm listening to this and I'm realizing, okay, I had a preconceived notion that that's incorrect. I've heard you've got to be an institutional player
Yeah.
in order to invest in some of those markets. Are there and is there an abundance of interest from folks who have jobs outside of real estate in investing, or does it seem to be like, hey, if you're going to be an investor in London, this has got to be your focus?
If you're looking for consistent, high-quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency, it's the most sophisticated, data-driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
I think there is. I would say there's probably quite a big age gap. I think it's either the kind of, a couple of my investors are 50 plus, which makes sense because they've kind of made their money and been around. And then I think there's a lot more of the sort of, I guess, Generation X type thing, young money that kind of is wanting to work for themselves and kind of has an idea of what they want to do. And they are probably learning things or more interested in learning things younger, earlier in that phase than maybe a lot of us were at that time around. So I think there is, there are means and ways of doing it. As I say, the prices here vary so dramatically that, you do get what we classify as super prime. So anything in, central London, where I had a client I was working with a couple of years ago who was looking for a house for £70 million, which is crazy, like in the grand scheme of things. But you can also still buy really interesting stuff. I think, like anything, there are plenty of good deals. They just have to stack up, and the hardest thing is finding ones that stack up, because everyone
Yeah.
thinks that they have the greatest thing since sliced bread. And
Yeah, when it's their home, right?
I apologize because my phone is just going off. Is that bothering you? Do you want me to stop that?
That's okay. That's okay. It'll probably resolve on its own. I do want to ask you about some of these opportunities in the urban sprawl in London. So
Mm,
when you're mentioning, like, hey, you may have this perspective, London is this area, but it's
mm,
also encompassing,
mm.
this greater surrounding area. Is there an opportunity? You mentioned like Generation X and
Yeah,
newer money.
yeah.
Is there an opportunity for folks to either pool their capital or themselves invest, in their personal portfolio in some of those surrounding areas as a developer? Meaning, could they do ground up construction over there,
Oh,
or is everything pretty much, everything has already been built up in the surrounding
I
areas?
don't think I don't think it has been. I don't think it has been built up. We've expanded a lot of infrastructure here, so there's sort of new train lines and things that have gone in, and that's kind of obviously opened a lot of other areas up that were probably previously secondary or tertiary or worse, to making them a lot easier to get in and out of central London, and therefore obviously they have seen that natural increase in development. I think here with development, I don't know how it is in the States, but there is a lot of red tape here. So, for instance, if you are buying something, say without planning, you're buying a site that you want to develop planning on. London has this thing called the London Plan, which is essentially the kind of planning rules. The problem with it is that it's kind of taken on the opinion of each borough within London how they interpret that plan. So sometimes what you will get permission wise in one location, you will not get permission wise in another location, and therefore, from a developer side of things, it makes things quite tricky. So most you can obviously then buy things with planning, but obviously you have to have the construction element down pretty tight, because if you don't and that runs over, people are working on probably a 20% profit margin, ideally. But you are still determining, depending on how long the scheme is, right? It might only be 5 or 6 units. So it might be, 7, 8 months worth of 9 months worth of construction. But we live in a very fluid market, especially on the sales side here. So it makes it a little bit more risky from a ground up scheme. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think that sort of, if you can buy things that are kind of slightly run down, or have that opportunity to just, get a refresh in them, and get them done and get them out and rented, you're then in a position where you can borrow against and leverage that in the future for probably something bigger. And I think that's the smarter way to do it. With my business partner, we have looked at a couple of really, really interesting things, but you're then going, it changes the risk profile, because you're then going, if we do this, we can't really do another deal for a year because we need to kind of focus on this one. In which case you look at the basis of going, if I can make X doing this, but actually I'm making Y, or similar, or just very, doing something that we can almost do with our eyes closed and keep moving, then in some respects that feels a little bit safer from a risk profile point of view for me.
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you've done it before, you have something to rely on versus trying something new. And in Texas, where I'm licensed, talk about development. It's still not something like you snap your fingers and there's an apartment complex. You still have to get zoning and permits, and that can be tricky. And people have lots of stories about how difficult that process is. But there's also so much development happening that very quickly the pro forma changes for the everyday investor, and then also for someone who may be slightly larger. An example of this was like in the capital of Texas, in Austin, you had rents stabilize or even go down, which was like unforeseen. How could that happen, right?
Yeah.
And I probably contrast that. How often do rents go down in London? Probably not often, right?
No. I mean, sometimes with the rates that they go up, I'm living here at the moment. I have another place which is rented out, and the agent was like, oh, it's gone up, like, I think they were saying like £200 a month, and I was like, it's only a year ago. It makes no sense to me how logically that can be the basis. And to be fair, I've got, in that place, I've got very, very nice tenants. So I would rather have a little bit less and much more comfort from someone that I don't have to worry about, than kind of chasing things. So but no, I don't think rents have ever gone down in London, if I'm totally honest.
That's a huge issue in the States, is this idea of affordable housing, and they're trying to tackle it so many different ways. And that's actually good to see, because I think the general public may think like nothing is happening anywhere. It's just getting more and more expensive. If you're looking at, New York City and, Miami, then it's going to be tough to find affordable housing. But I do know that in many places, they're doing some innovative things. In Los Angeles, you can build what they're calling ADUs, alternative dwelling units, in your backyard of your home.
Oh, wow.
And they're doing this in multiple places. And then I've also seen too, there's this huge movement towards like RV parks and modular homes.
Yep.
Is there any discussion out there of, affordable housing, or is it kind of a thing where, well, if you want to live in London, you're going to have to,
No, it's on every sort of manifesto of any time an election comes up. There's two problems really. Mainly going back to what I mentioned about the planning permission route, it takes too long, and from a sort of providing what we would call affordable or social housing, probably two slightly different things. From a developer perspective, it's quite difficult to make money out of. And the rate at which we need them being built is nowhere near kind of what they're doing. Part of the problems we had years ago was, so this fell under what was called Section 106. So if you didn't want to build, if you didn't want to give a proportion to affordable housing local authority, they would figure out what the viability of it or what the cost was, and you would pay a sum. So what sometimes would happen in places like Canary Wharf is you would obviously build, 150 units, and you don't want to give 25% of them away to social housing because it's going to affect the sales prices on your premium ones, which used to be £600 a foot and are probably now £1,200 a foot. So they used to do this thing where they, the local authority would say, okay, cool, if you give us 5 million, then we won't worry about it. And then they build them, 6 miles away. So it kind of, it negated its own problem. It just kept that cycle going around where if the person telling you to build the stuff is also willing to build them further away and take money for you not to build them where you were originally going to,
why would you do it?
Then yeah, and that's part of the issue. There aren't any incentives apart from the moral one, which there does need to be places. There's gentleman you may be familiar with on YouTube called Rory Sutherland, who's a big marketeer, and he was saying how what a banker would spend now in Fulham, which is sort of very central London, is probably what a postman would have lived in 100 years ago. It's all that kind of perspective, and so it is interesting. I don't know what the solution is. Everyone's been trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
There is a big need for it, especially if rents keep going up.
I mean, when we talk specifically about this idea of like affordable housing, I can speak from the state's perspective and from living in multiple different areas, it is regional. So like
Yeah.
if I'm talking about affordable housing in Texas, that seems like a easier hurdle
Ask
to overcome than
in New York.
affordable housing in New York. And as an example of this, you used to be able to go through, Manhattan, right? And walk through streets of Manhattan or really through so many of the boroughs in New York City, and you could find what felt like was, the ability to kind of fight and work your way up. Maybe you just got out of school, but you were going to make it work.
Yeah.
I don't see that, and I could be wrong because I haven't lived directly in New York City, but from folks who I know who are living there and from having seen the way things have gone, I don't see that being realistic right now. I feel like wherever you are,
Yeah.
In New York City, you really have to be a heavy earner in order to survive. Otherwise, you've got to look at, hey, I'm going to commute in, which is what a lot of people are doing. And where I grew up in northern New Jersey, there's what feels like a commuter town now. I mean, it was not that way when I grew up, but now it's hey, you're living here and you're commuting into New York. And so, it changes not just London, right? But it changes how the surrounding area operates as well.
Yeah. I think, obviously I can't necessarily speak to New York, but I have a very good friend who's a hotelier out there. And I think the stories that kind of from when he was a kid are very different to the reality now. It is hard because, here we have what they classify as gentrification, right? So like it's what brings an area up, and it's a little bit of this synonym, a little bit like trickle down economics, right? In the theory that if it's gentrified here and the prices go up, and then we'll expand the transport, and that will make the next place further down. Look, I think realistically nowadays, what I would classify as zone one, sort of prime central London, you've probably got to be a multimillionaire to be able to afford a home outright. Or even probably on some mortgages. What I used to sell in Canary Wharf, which is probably zone 2, 3, back in the day for like £200,000 or £300,000 for a studio flat is probably now £600,000-700,000 for a studio flat.
Right.
And I guess the theory is, when does it stop, right? Because we went through this in 2008 when banks here, especially, obviously, but part of the global piece, were just giving out money on houses left, right, and centre, and it obviously collapsed the market. I think the market here is very cyclical. I don't think we'll necessarily see a collapse. I think we will see there's a bit more of a plateauing and a kind of leveling off. And obviously, we've had interest rates change here over the last couple of years with some very strange government decisions, which I think has probably tapered it slightly, and it did need that. But I think everyone's been trying to figure out what the solution is. I don't know about in the States, but I think certainly in the UK and in London, if you're in property for long enough, you'll always win. It's very much a
buy and
long-term.
hold.
Yeah, it's very much a long-term gain. there are people now that have, in the 80s here, that you were allowed to buy, your council property. So there were people that bought what were considered rubbish council properties that are now worth £800,000 because they're in central London. And, people might have paid £80,000 for them in the 80s, which at the time seemed like a lot. But, now it isn't. So it just boils down to that, trying to find the right opportunities. And for me, the right people to kind of work with and kind of guide you on those things is paramount. Because I imagine the same as you. It's a big trust business over here. I do need people that are experts, but really, especially if I'm investing my money, I've got to be able to trust them, right? Because I'm my money where my mouth is. So that's always been paramount to any decision I've made. I have to trust you before there's even any point in us discussing a deal in the first place.
It's interesting. My whole career in real estate has been built off of relationships, even unconsciously, so I might not have been going into something. Like, the reason why I'm talking to you on this podcast is because of a deal that I had that didn't end up going through, but someone connected me with, this show. And that's just how these things happen. And so real estate is, as much as you have to know how to underwrite a deal and, transactionally how to operate, whether you're buying or selling, you also have to have these relationships and be nurturing them as well.
100%.
But we are coming up on time here, Richard. Any new projects that you're working on, or how can our audience reach out to you or your team?
I think, obviously you've got my website there, which is calderacapital.co.uk, or probably my Instagram is good. We're looking at, I'm probably trying to look to do about eight deals this year. 6 to 8 deals is kind of, on a 3 to 4 month cycle. If I can get a few of those through, we've agreed to this week, being this the first week of January, is a lovely way to start. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone that just has a general interest in London. I know, as I say, I've got a couple of friends out in New York, so I always try and kind of point things in their direction when they need it. So I'm very happy to talk about that. We do take in investor money. I try and keep that very small because obviously it's people that I, having worked corporate, I like to make money for people I like now as opposed to who I don't have to. So it's very much like that. But I'm very happy to talk anything. And as we said, eventually I would. The American market is something that interests me as well. What I see on Instagram for kind of what you can get for your money in some parts of Texas in comparison to here is crazy stupid. So, you may be trying to find me a place at some point.
Hey, Richard, I like the sound of that. We'll have to stay in touch. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, Dylan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.